courthouse. This is probably where they actually held court. But I think that eventually they became the head nun's quarters. It was definitely a room inhabited by a female spirit. Our state archaeologist stayed here last summer. He told me that for about the first 3 weeks that he'd be here, he'd wake up in the middle of the night and he'd hear a woman's voice calling his name. Paul, Paul. He finally said, what? And she never talked to him again. For myself, there's a little supply closet in this lobby-way here, and I was here in October with another volunteer, Penny. We were cleaning up the place to kind of close it up for the season. It was my job to open up the doors and the windows and grab what other trash might be in there while Penny was in the supply closet getting our cleaning stuff. And I started with this room over here, opened the door, stepped in, and was just hit with this wall of insanely, sickeningly sweet floral smell. My grandma raised lilies. Lilies were a popular perfume at the time in the 1800s, and that's exactly what it reminded me of. I stepped out of the room and I'm like, Penny, come check this smell out. And Penny walked the 5 feet, stepped into the room and said, what smell? I stepped back in. There was absolutely not a trace of that odor whatsoever. One of our volunteers is from Great Falls. Her name's Emily. Most of us get here and we stay Friday and Saturday nights only. Emily is not too fond of the long drive on Sunday nights after volunteering all day, and so she'll stay Sunday night, which means she's often the only one in this building. So what she'll do is she'll lock and brace the door with a chair at the other end of the hall. She will lock all of the rooms and take the keys out of the doors up the hall. She will also lock and put a chair underneath this door. And on several occasions, she has woken up to hear a woman screaming. The first time she heard it, she jumped out of bed, came running out to the lobby to see who might have snuck in, and she said she realized that the screaming was coming strictly from inside that room.
Oh, that light just went out.
That light's gone out.
Light just went out.
Yeah, I call that Samantha's light. We're still in Samantha's neighborhood, and I'll explain that in a second. The first night that Emily woke up to hear the screaming, she actually slept in another room. But after that, she keeps returning to there. She said she just turns her iPod up really, really loudly and doesn't hear the screaming anymore. Most of the rooms in the hallway here, they all have stories about people being touched or poked or a little pinch. Penny generally stays in this room because normally the porch light's on. She says that keeps her safe from the ghosts. But one night she was climbing into her bunk. She felt a little pinch on the back of her thigh. Thought it was her granddaughter. Her granddaughter was still in the bathroom. The worst rooms, though, are rooms 7 and 8, which are the very last 2 deepest, darkest rooms at the end of the hall. And for whatever reason, something not nice inhabits those. Some of our volunteers bring their pets. The pets refuse to walk down to those rooms. People who say they've been poked or pinched come out with bruises or blood blisters from there. The nicest story I know about room 7, we had a brand new volunteer. We, veteran volunteers, never mentioned room 7 and 8. And all these rooms are first come, first serve, so we get here early. So it was training. New volunteer was in room 7, and it was April, snowing a little bit outside, and I get this knock on my door at about 11:30, and I open up the door, and here is this big, brave, burly Marine just home from overseas, and he's standing there with no shoes on. He's still buttoning up his jeans, has no shirt. He's absolutely pale. He's got his Colt 45 revolver over his shoulder. And he said, why don't you know I'm going to go sleep in my car? I'm like, dude, it's snowing outside. You can't go sleep in your car. What's the problem? And he said, well, my roommate snores, and I don't have a roommate. He said that he was sitting in the chair reading his little volunteer manual when his bed across the room started snoring, and then it creaked as if somebody had rolled over in it. It took us about a month to tell him that was the nicest story any of us knew about room 7. All the rooms are hardwired with fancy smoke alarms, so if one goes off, they all go off, and it also alerts our emergency services. It was one night, it was a full house, about 3 or 4 volunteers in every single room, and some people swear that they heard a woman call out, "Get out, the gulch is on fire," and then those alarms all went off. So they do make their way out here to the street, and it's a beautiful night like tonight. There's no smoke, there's no fire, there's no smell of smoke. As they're standing around waiting for the emergency services to come down and clear the building, they realize that one of the volunteers, George, is missing. So they go down to his room, room 6, and they're pounding on the door. They're thinking perhaps that's the room that this fire has started. And George calls out that no, there's no fire in there. And they said, it doesn't matter, you need to get out. We need to find out what's going on. And George says, I'd love to get out, but I can't get off his bed. George said that it felt like something was sitting on him, holding him down on that bed. So there's spare keys in the storage room up front. People came up and got that key. George says at the moment the light from the hall hit his room, his weight lifted off of him. Not only did he jump up out of bed, but he left the building and he's never returned since.